question is the fact that if I answer that, then I make enemies. Yeah. I'm not going to say names either way, but people still wonder if I think, you know what I mean? So it's dangerous. One of the sad things about politics is like how dangerous it is to be honest, because you will make enemies by being honest, but we have to be honest. So.
Right.
All right, I'll shut up now and let you do your thing.
Oh, that's all right. That's fine. I should probably start the timer. All right, I'll see you back in 2 minutes. All right, I'm going to start the timer since we were yakking away, man. Live. Where's the live timer? There it is. Let's do this. country back right now. she going to stay here long enough? Well, I hope so. Well, hey, y'all. My name is Tim. I'm your TruthSlinger, and this is my dog. Where are you going? Where are you going? That was my dog, Coco. And I am your resident TruthSlinger today. Welcome to episode, make it bigger because my old eyes is small, 308 of Wartime Christianity. And we are coming to you live from the central woods of Maine in our bunker with my shower in the background because my bathroom door is wide open. But you know what? We don't care about things like that. And as a matter of fact, you probably never would have noticed that it was a shower unless I had brought it to your attention. But anyway, yes, I am. I'm streaming. That's what it says, I'm streaming. Well, I'm happy to be seen. Thank God my wife sees me. So anyway, today we're also going to see something else. We're going to see my friend in Maine, my new friend I've been talking to a couple of times, and that's Chuck Ellis. So I'm going to catch him when he's done picking his nose. All right, here we go. All right, here you go, Chuck. Hey, buddy, how's it going?
It's going well.
Good.
Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, man, it's good to have you in the house again. I wanted to get some people in the house. We got Kate. Kate's in the house. So hi, Kate. It's good we have at least somebody watching us. It makes it more interesting. Nice. Yeah, 23 people watching us. We'll get there. TruthSlinger Project continues to grow, and definitely you're part of it, and we're excited to have you back. So one of the things that we talked about last time was, well, you fill me in. I know the syndrome, okay? I've gone on other people's shows before, and then you get off and you go, I just really feel like I wish I would have been more prepared to answer that question or ready to answer that question, and blah, 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 blah. See, now the way I solve the problem is I just go and I get off there, and then I record another show and say all the damn things that I should have said while I was on the interview. So what I want to do is start off with that, man, is to give you a chance to say some things that maybe you wish we would have addressed last time, maybe, and then we'll spin off from there and see where we go. What do you think?
That works for me.
Yeah, man. So tell us what's going on.
Yeah. So, one of the things that's so important for anybody who's trying to get into politics and be in politics, which I am, for those of you who don't know already, I'm running for Maine State House District 128, Westbrook, what I call Westbrook north of the river. And I ran 2 years ago as well. It's a typical district for a conservative to win in, being about 60 to 70% liberal in terms of the voting base, but running anyway to give the people a chance. But obviously, if you're running for office, and I think if you're doing anything really, but especially if you're running for office, being true, being honest, and being authentic is really, really important. And one of the things I felt after answering the question about whether or not there were any what are they called, rhinos in Augusta or in Maine politics, and I think I was kind of not ready for the question, but also it's not one of the things that I'm thinking about. We're doing so poorly here. I think in the state of Maine at building a movement, although I think there are some good things that are happening, but overall we've done such a poor job that almost at this point I would prefer to have a rhino than nothing. Again, in this field, one of the things that I need to do in order to have a successful political career is I have to build friends within the movement, within the party. And one of the ways that you can get in trouble doing that is by calling people out, especially when you're just getting started. And so, my answer previously was very cautious, and I'm not going to name names, but the short version is I definitely think we do have rhinos in the party. And I think rhinos are part of the problem that we have in Maine, but I think a bigger part of the problem is that we're such a divided state. You've got northern Maine and southern Maine. And the feeling, regardless of whether or not this is true, but the feeling in southern Maine, specifically Cumberland County where I am, is that the party doesn't really care about that. And I know that there are people within the party, and they would say that they do. They're just trying to be strategic. We need to spend the money and the resources that we have on winnable races. The problem is that they do that year after year after year after year, and they slowly abandon the area that has the largest voting bloc and the voting bloc where there's the most potential to, over time, shift people's way of thinking and take back our state. So I definitely think there are rhinos within the party, but I think that divided nature of the party is a bigger issue than the rhinos. It's a lack of long-term strategy and one of messaging, which I probably have talked about before, where we're not doing a good job, communicating our values the way that we should be. And just for fun, there is somebody in the chat asking, I don't know if this is me, they're asking if they like RFK. I definitely love RFK. I think especially what he's brought to the MAGA movement, bringing in Maha, as well as a number of other things, I think is really valuable. But that's one of the things that when we talk about messaging, one of the things that I've been saying within the Republican movement in Cumberland County, but I've also been talking to the main GOP about, is that we actually, in order to win the current battle that we're in, we need to win the battle for classical liberalism. And RFK joining the MAGA movement has been the most significant thing in this election cycle to move in that direction, as we're able to unify around the things that we can all commonly agree on. Again, the Constitution, the First Amendment, the right to free speech, and obviously something Trump and Elon and obviously huge RFK are in favor of. In order to actually be able to have truth be legal, you have to be able to say whatever you want, essentially, and then we can communicate about it, and truth can be discoverable. But if you start to limit free speech, you ensure that at some point truth will be shut down by power.
Right. I agree. And when I say Republicans in name only, there's a couple of different things that come to mind when you say that term, and any term, because any label immediately puts things in a box, because first of all, I say it and I mean something by it, and then there is something you have in your mind of what you're understanding what that is, and a lot of times that already creates a lot of confusion, right? And I think Republican in name only, the best thing I would give as example is Roger Cates the other day, who is deliberately, cynically changing parties to suit whatever, and there's political theater going on, right, with Paul Mills and his sister, right? So that it seems as if at one point they're on different parties and ideologically they're pushing back on each other, and it's all part of a cynical game, right? So I think that's what I'm referring to when I refer to the term rhino. But then again, at the same time, I think that, if someone would look at me and look at the term strictly and say, wow, you're a Republican in name only, because I'm classically liberal in some ways of thought, some libertarian streaks that are going on there, right? And so I think that it's important that we shed these labels, and I've been trying to reach out to some people that, one guy who's been a part of, hey, could you do me a favor and take care of whatever that's going on out there and let a dog out and put one away in a cage or do something, because that's really distracting. Thanks. Sorry, we got dogs over here. But that what I'm trying to talk to somebody that's in, a black guy that was a part of BLM as part of his, I guess growing up, you will, in Maine, right? And there was no riots or anything like that in Maine or whatever. And the guy seems like it's just a nice guy. He's a homesteader. He's fishes. He's got friends that are Trump voters, but he's into social work and he believes in DEI, but it's not exactly, when I talk to him about it a little bit, it's not exactly what I understand as DEI. So there's some mystery there. But, it's like if I don't sit down and have a talk with him, Chuck, I'm never going to be able to, none of us are going to be able to figure anything out. So I think many times that labels, although they're convenient, they automatically place us in camps. And I think they separate us. And I think we need to get to the point where we start saying, all right, it is what it is. Even the crap hole that we have, right? It is what it is. But it is what it is. And what do we do with the resources that we have, the best we have at the moment we have, to make things the best that we can for the people that we serve? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. How do we find ways to work together to figure out, where we align, so that we can figure out where we can work together? Because even if you want to call somebody a rhino, and I think essentially what they're calling them at that point is that they're calling them a Democrat. They're saying you're not truly conservative. A lot of people at the national level, that claim to be politicians, but at the same time are voting in like these huge spending bills, and I think that's one of the things on a national level when we talk about rhinos, and you get that I think here at the state level too, where they they're conservatives, but here's the reality: is like I'd rather have a rhino Republican right now than a radical liberal. I mean, like this is the reality, and so there are things that I can work together with rhinos, with moderate Democrats, and with people on so many different parts of the spectrum. And I think in general in our society, you talk about having conversations and coming to a better place. That's what we need to do as a society. Like again, I think we talked about this last time I was on, but like the reality that policy is not going to fix this, right? Us as individuals and as a collective community and as communities coming together, working together, there's this common saying that I think many of us probably know, which is it takes a village, right? And there a lot of times they're talking about raising a child, right? And I think the reality is like there in so many levels in our society, we have gotten so individualistic and just shirked any type of like societal and social responsibility. On the conservative side, we tend to shirk it entirely. On the liberal side, they shirk it individually, but try to get the government to do all the work for them. And there's probably some on both sides that are doing that. But the reality is, like, the government is not where the answer is.
No, but spiritually speaking, okay, this is where the church has failed. This is the vacuum that is left when I say that you have a cake, right, and you take out whatever's underneath the frosting, right? That's what happened when the church grows cold, the church dies, the church isn't stepping up and doing what it needs to be doing. Then the government steps in that gap, and as a matter of fact, deliberately wants to hasten that because the government wants to be your daddy.
Yeah, the government wants power and control. It is not. This is the problem with a lot of these, like with considering this is connected, I should say, to considering like corporations to be people. Like I think that was a decision that was made back in like the 2008. I think somebody was telling me recently. So don't feel free to fact check me on that, but that's not coming from me. But like the idea that a corporation becomes a person, well, it's not a person. It doesn't actually care about anyone. It is an organization that is simply seeking to grow and gain more power at whatever cost.
Yeah, it's a psychopath.
That's what these corporations are doing, and that's what the government is doing. Sorry, go ahead.
It's a psychopath, technically speaking. It's a globulous, psychopath.
Right, and so the government does not actually care about anyone, and it seems like all it's doing is becoming a much bigger organism, a blob that is taking up all of society and not improving situations. I ask the question sometimes, like when people have talked about the idea of like completely socializing healthcare. I'm like, okay. So that's giving, or like more recently, last year, I think it was last year when they were talking about the CMP becoming a public utility. I'm like, what is one thing that the government has ever managed efficiently? Like, there's one that I can think of, and it's this organization called SCORE. And SCORE works with small businesses to help them grow, help people start businesses and help them grow. And it touts that the people that it helps, the businesses that they've been able to help, have paid more money in taxes than it costs to run SCORE. So, but outside of that, there's nothing that they run efficiently. Everything, there's tons of waste. It would be so much better handled if it was handled by somebody else, and there would be so much less corruption if it was handled by a private entity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, like, why people don't recognize the problems with a growing government is beyond me, because the evidence is there.
It is. The government has absolutely no profit motive. It has no reason to be efficient. There's no answering. You just go back and you say, we're out of money. We're over budget. Give us more. And so there just is no incentive, right, to be better at giving out driver's licenses. Okay, there's just isn't. And so, yeah, the government doesn't typically, especially, and that's which is what's terrifying, because if you've been watching the show that we've been doing with Hugo, and we did Legacy of a Nation the other night, Hugo is very, very, very smart man regarding Marxism. And the fact that we've got about 175 to 100 key Marxists that are in the government that have been pushing for this agenda, and that it's here, and basically we've got to get rid of those key people and then get about a dozen to 16 years of solid leadership in the government. But I think the government needs to, as soon as the first thing that it needs to do is hack itself to bits, right? I mean, we should have large portions of the government completely shut down. We need to start for the first time going the other direction, because it's bloated. It does nothing but serve itself. It grows. It no longer serves the people. As a matter of fact, it's become a giant surveillance apparatus against its own people. It's been weaponized. So, it's but yeah. So, and then the other thing I think we need is, we need to throw a bunch of people out. Those people need to be replaced with people that are willing to go, yeah, man, term limits. We don't want to do this for a living. This is not something we want to grow rich doing. This is a whole other thing. I mean, people that never worked an honest, hard day in their life, right? They've been a politician their whole life, and they have multi-million-dollar mansions. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. Yeah. That's corruption, So,
yeah, I mean, my understanding too is that, like, if you're a senator, like, the other thing that kind of blows my mind is, as a result of this, but is that if you're a senator for like 2 terms, and my understanding is you basically get your pension after that, like, you would continue to be able to get paid. And again, feel free to fact check me on that. It's not something I'm running on, but I'm pretty sure that they only need to serve a couple terms, and then now they get money for the rest of their lives. And it's a lot of money that they get in the first place. And I think the amount of money that we pay our politicians, regardless if you agree with whether or not you agree on term limits, I personally internally go back and forth on this, not because there's a lot of problems with the way that we currently run things. But I also know, like, in other societies, like, there's one guy, you can't see it on the screen, but this guy back up here, this is Winston Churchill, was a career politician, and I think because of his involvement in World War II, we're really thankful that he was a career politician. And another one is William Wilberforce, who ended slavery in the British Empire. Very thankful that he was able to spend the majority. But the truth is, like, I don't know how much money he made doing that. Right? So I think the bigger problem is not necessarily that you have people in the political sphere for a long period of time. I think it's more the money that's involved in politics, both in terms of, if they're doing, so they get paid to be in office, but they also can use money from their campaign to pay themselves as well. They can pay themselves a salary from the campaign. And there are a lot of ways to make money off politics, especially like trading in the stock market based on information that they or their family members, because technically they can't, but their family members can. And there are all these issues. And I think those, and then the lobbyists and the ways in which the lobbyists, treat them to things, which is essentially bribery in some form or fashion. And so I think those, more than term limits, are the issues. If we were looking at term limits, I'd be more in favor of the kind of the way that Maine does term limits, where basically, not for governor, but actually for governor too, where you have so many terms that you can run, then you have to at least take one off, but then you can go back. That I think something along those lines is something that I would probably be in favor of, but I think that's secondary to the other issues.
Yeah, well, I agree. I mean, here's the goal, right, of the reason that I suggest term limits is 2 reasons. Yeah. One is it breaks the cycle of the dark money. It's an attempt to break the cycle of the dark money. Now you have to start over with all the relationships, and I got to reset the whole damn thing. It's not a lifelong relationship with dark money, And then the second thing, is the fact that, and perhaps maybe there's a way to accomplish it, to say maybe we do term limits in one house of government and in the other, similar to the way we do the Senate and the House, because I think that having this idea that we rotate in and out people that are, have been own businesses, have been lived in the real world, function in the real world, I think there's really something to be said about that, right? And when you get off into that elite bubble and you get into that world where you get into being able to make money from all those different directions. And I think every one of them is, absolutely one of the things that would need to be looked at, because the insider trading, that's absolutely ridiculous, right? I mean, there should be laws that say, Nancy Pelosi can't know, who's chief of this committee, on technology, and then make all this money off of chips, right? And, go over to Taiwan and the night before sell all a bunch of stocks or something. It's ridiculous. And so...
and under the guise that, well, it wasn't her, it was her husband, and she didn't share information. It's like, okay, we've got enough evidence to suggest that she must be sharing evidence, because he's made too many trades, and the only way for him to have done that is with insider information.
I mean, you understand that these days, when you try to explain something to people, and it's not only that you have to have a conflict of interest in order not to do something, right? You have to have even the appearance of the conflict, right? The appearance of evil cannot be there. And if there is the possibility, then you got to go, we can't do this, right? But, we lost that. That shame a long time ago, right? People just they don't recuse themselves anymore. At least the left doesn't. And, the whole thing comes back to sort of where we were talking about earlier, sort of this idea of the uniparty, right? And the money that comes from interests that are not of the people, by the people, for the people. They are interests of corporations that want to use people as batteries in like a literal matrix that we live in. And I mean, that's not a crazy thing when people say this anymore. They literally want to see pods eating the bugs, and they think in their twisted little brains, I think, the ones way up there anyway, not maybe so much the local politics, but I think to some degree, people in leadership, especially in that uniparty, they have this idea that they go to bed at night, I think, thinking they're okay with themselves because what they're doing really is for the greater good. It's this utilitarian mindset that they've adopted that I think confuses all of us that are, I guess, more sane, that say, does that anyone what I'm thinking make sense?
I mean, they sit there and they think to themselves, I think you're right. I think some of them actually think what they're doing is good, and that's how they can sleep at night. They basically are like, well, the rest of society is not smart enough. They're too dumb. If they're given the options that we would do okay with, they will make poor decisions and they will ruin society and the world and all that other kind of stuff. So we have to take that away from them in order to protect them. Yeah. It kind of reminds me of the evil robot from the movie I, Robot, who essentially becomes sentient and takes control because humans are killing each other at too high of a rate. You have these wars, and so we're going to put down all the difficult people and basically make people do what we want them to do. It's the same ideology. These people literally are the bad guy from the movie I, Robot. Yeah. If you haven't seen it, it's incredible. Yeah. But they think they're the good guy, and that's what makes them so dangerous. And again, I'm sure some of them know that that's not. They just like having power and control over people, like the nobles and the kings of old. But I think a lot of people who follow them and a lot of people who make their efforts successful, as far as they have been, actually buy into that ideology. I mean, most of the laws that we create here are because, people made stupid decisions, and because people made stupid decisions, we're going to make it so that they can't make that stupid decision. Like, I used to work in banking, right? And like the Consumer Protection Agency and all the different things that they do to make sure that banks communicate in such a way, and all these financial institutions. And look, if we just held people accountable for their actions, people's behaviors would change. Like, if you actually if like really horrific things would happen if you made poor financial decisions, if you didn't read through all of the requirements of what's all the fine print, right? And something really bad happened, well, it would be news, and then other people would not do it, right? But instead, we've said, well, we can't trust them. We have to hold the bank accountable, and like, I'm not saying banks are good. I actually think we should have probably let some of the banks fail in 2008. But the point is, we need to bring back personal responsibility. That, like, my decisions matter. Like, when I was 18, I decided to go to college and I signed up for student loans, and I didn't fully understand the consequences of my actions. Right? However, over time, I've learned, I understand. Fortunately, I didn't take on as much student loan debt as other people, but I'm 18. I'm making a decision. I know that I have to sign on the line. I should be accountable for my actions. But, what a lot of people are trying to say today is that, I shouldn't be accountable because I didn't know. I didn't understand. I was told I didn't have another choice. And, and the reality is, like, that's a problem that's happening in our society on so many levels. There's a lack of accountability and responsibility. And if I do anything that makes my life worse, I have to blame somebody for letting me do it.
Yeah. Consequences, right? A lack of consequences, which brings me to a left turn, right? I don't think you're dealing with this down the street. I know we do have a migrant problem in Maine, which is deliberate, just like it is everywhere else. And we were talking about the debate earlier, and Donald Trump coming over the top of that podium and saying, they're eating the dogs and cats, for God's sakes. And I just about, we were streaming it live, okay? And I mean, we were over here, and I'm just like, let me see what I got here going. I got this going on the whole time, Get him every time, because I just love Trump, okay? I'm just like, man, all and so I'm like, okay, the next day, right? We watched the fallout from this, and I'm telling you, it was interesting because on the right, and I hadn't listened really too much on the left, but on the right, it was all over the place. And I'm like going, wow. Some people said that it was, a major fail, missed opportunities, this, that, and the other thing. And I'm thinking to myself, first of all, okay, you're not running for president of the United States. He is. You're not behind that podium, okay? He is. Right? And there's nobody else could have weathered everything that son of a bitch weathered in the last 6 years, okay? To still stand up there with all that shit, okay, and have to be Bruce Lee against David Muir, Silent L. And that stone cold bitch sitting next to him who did nothing but fact check him with lies half the time, and then never held Kamala's feet to the fire. Okay, I think it's amazing what he did do. And, and so I'm sitting here going, all right, you went out there, and said you thought this was the bomb, how's this going to, and I'm like thinking to myself, man, this is going to be like a fine wine, guys, boys and girls. You got to let this one age, because he said something real shocking. People like their pets. Let me tell you, everybody went, huh? Everybody, they're going to use that. And I'm telling you, and even Marianne Williamson, Kooky Marianne, who ran for president, the one who's into crystals and spirits and shit. She was, do you remember? She ran on the Democrat side. She ran as a Democrat during the Democratic debates. She's a psychic. Okay, she has a radio program and everything at Kookster, right? Just.
So if she's a psychic, then why did she run? Because she should have known that she was going to lose.
Wait a minute, that one requires a rim shot. There you go. All right, got a rim shot for you. So yeah, that's a good one. But right. So anyway, she even said, that hey guys, hello, Haitians are into voodoo. They're not just eating these animals, they're using the bones in rituals, right? And they're saying incantations while they're slaying them, and they're using the blood. Hello. And so it's if you don't let this go and you pull this shit as a hoax, people are flocking down to Springfield, Ohio to cover this now, talking to people. And I'm telling you, it's going to come out that they really are savages. Yeah, they are, So what say you, man, if you were in Springfield, Ohio? and by the way, just what do you think of the debate, too? Just those two things. Yeah. You go.
I would be like, voodoo is something that I think is kind of frightening, because to me it's like demonic. But I also remember the funny stuff in Anchorman 2, which I think is far better than Anchorman 1 because of the satire of seeing the media basically turn to not reporting actual news. So I know that the Anchorman lovers would hate me for saying that Anchorman 2 is better. But I absolutely loved it. But the kid was his dad made him afraid of voodoo. Anyway, but yeah, I would be frightened of anybody who's practicing any kind of voodoo. But I think you're right when you talk about like this debate being a little bit more like aged wine. I think one of the big mistakes that ABC did, and I think a lot of people noticed it in the moment, is that they began, they joined the debate. It's when I got the most angry as I was watching it. I am not somebody, just for the record, who has historically been a huge Trump supporter. Some people believe I am because I end up defending him, and I defend him by pointing out what he's actually trying to say, because so many people try to misquote him and say that he's trying to do something other than what he's doing. And so I end up arguing with probably more people about this than most Americans, because people say so many false things about him that I just can't, because I believe in truth, I can't help but defend him. And from a policy standpoint, I'm very much on board with Trump, and so I've never been opposed to like much of his policy. But anyway, I've not been like, in fact, I've been criticized by some of the conservatives for not being MAGA enough. But, in this debate, the moment the moderators entered the debate was when I became furious, because your job and your role is to be unbiased. And instead, they entered the debate by at one point arguing and giving their opinion of something that happened, which doesn't matter. You're not running for president. You're not supposed to be a part of the debate. But also the fact checks that they had. They fact checked him on multiple things that have turned out, looking like you're turning out to be true. One of them had to do with, obviously with the animals. And I think that's one of the bigger ones that people are freaking out a lot. And Americans do love their pets. In America, I think we're a little bit weird, where people call their pets their fur babies, and they talk about them as though they're children. I'm sorry, but real children are children, and pets are great. I don't have a problem with pets, but they're not, in my opinion, they're not. No,
they're not surrogates. We have both our children. Both my children went prodigal. They don't talk to me anymore, and I got 5 cats and 4 dogs, and it's compensation. I get it. Yeah. They're not people. They don't have souls, but they're given to us by God, and and we love the hell out of them. And they're great. They're I'd hate to see anything happen to any of them. So
yeah. But Trump is turning out to be right on this issue, and it's playing out, and people are seeing it. So it would be interesting to see, what the long-term impact of this debate is. I had a conversation with a good friend of mine who is on the other side of the aisle, much more liberal than me, believes in socialism and a number of other issues, and tends to believe most of what he hears from the mainstream media. And he watched the debate, and he came away from it basically saying, I don't really think this changes anything. I think people who are thinking about voting for Trump are probably still going to vote for Trump, and people who are thinking about voting for Kamala are going to vote for Kamala. I don't think we learned anything in this debate. Right. I mean, Donald Trump, in large part, behaved in the way in which he's historically behaved. I think the reason that conservatives are so dejected about this is because I think they were hoping that this would go so well, we wouldn't have to worry or work hard for the next 6 weeks. And now the reality is we have to work hard, right? We don't know what's going to happen necessarily, but we have to work hard. But this debate is not going to itself determine this election. What you choose to do over the next 6 weeks or so, I don't know, maybe it's 7 weeks, is really what's going to have the most impact. Are you talking with your friends? And are you talking about the opportunity that they have? You can either vote in favor of, not just at that level, there's so many other things to vote for, but you can either vote for somebody who's going to lead us into World War III, somebody who's going to take away freedom of speech, somebody who is going to destroy our economy, make it far worse than it already is, that is going to give your country away to more illegal immigrants. Ultimately it's going to lead to ruin. And we're going to hit, because of the national debt that already happens, the only way that she can do this is by printing more money. But if you print more money, at a higher rate than we already are, you're leading us to financial ruin, the likes of which the world has never seen. We're talking about a depression that will make the Great Depression look like a walk in the park, that will lead to famine where hundreds of millions of people will die. Hundreds of millions of people will probably die in wars as a result of this. Like, this is really what we're talking about. Children will be mutilated. Abortions will happen all the way up until birth, which is legal already in the state of Maine, just for the record.
Which was another one we highlighted already in Twitter that's already proved out to be not a few hours old, is that Trump was right about it. And they just lie. They just say, she goes, that never happens. And people just go, okay.
Yep, it does, specifically, I believe, in Minnesota. Where Tim Walz is the governor, and so, like, this is your choice. This is the choice right now. It's between. I don't even think that Donald Trump is the answer, even with the great team that he has, right? But he gives us hope. He presents an opportunity where we can take back our country by getting engaged and involved in our communities. We can try to work toward building laws that are going to make our country better. But, like, again, I still think there are concerns and challenges even with Trump in office. Obviously, the debt is still a huge issue, and I don't think there's a solution that I've seen presented that is good enough to make me feel really confident that we're going to stave off this ruin. But it creates an opportunity, and it gives us hope that we might come back from the edge.
Yeah. Anarchy Television, AT Wingnuts in the house, and he said pretty much that if you vote, you're giving consent to someone to rule over you. That's his input, and the way I look at that into the conversation is, look, this is the system we have. We've got to work within it until the system don't work no more. And we're all going to know when that is. Something tells me you're not going to have to go, is it time? Something tells me we're all just going to go, it's here. And so, that's why my message has been, we need to be prepared, right? And, we need to pray for the best, or hope for the best, and pray, and stuff like that, but be prepared for the worst. And we have to try and, it's easy to, like, when I first started to see, and it hit me from just a philosophical standpoint, Chuck, that you really can't name me any single institution that hasn't been corrupted on this planet, let alone in this country. It's just corruption is everywhere because of the salt and light has been removed from these fundamental places, and in many ways very strategically and surgically. But, and that Christian light has gone out in many places. And so what do you expect for an organization when it's run by a bunch of sinners? And I mean, like, evil ones, okay? The ones that are, like, really into power, and power never stops seeking power. And so now we're in this, man, I think we're in an epic struggle, and I hope, man, that we could just, vote for Trump, and then we'll just wrap some yellow tape around a few agencies, maybe move them to Texas or something, the FBI, and hire new people, all these things that we talk about. And then I kind of go, man, you heard Peter Strzok, man, when, his little, horns going, we had a plan B, and he's talking to his girlfriend, getting her all excited that he's like James Bond, he's going to save the world. And this alludes back to what we're talking about before. The government is filled with little shit trolls like that. You understand, Chuck? The ones that are in Fulton County that go, hey, I'm going to run these through again. And then there's this over here and that over here. There's rats in the cellar, like, everywhere. They're like cockroaches. And, like, when you make the argument that the last election was rigged, of course it was freaking rigged. But just one thing, that the Hunter Biden laptop alone shifted 18%
Well, the Hunter Biden laptop, and then another issue that I don't think gets brought up enough is how the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania violated the Constitution by changing the law. The legislature can do that.
Right,
in conjunction with the executive branch, which is the governor, but they just changed the law around when votes can be, when mail-in ballots could be received.
Right.
That's actually outside of their charter. They're not allowed to do that.
Wasn't that what Texas filed a lawsuit about, and the Supreme Court went?
Yeah.
Well, what the shit are you the Supreme Court for then? What time? It's just like, God, man. This is the time right now. Supreme. It's just all in the title and shit. Come on, this is the time. Stand up. No. They walked away from it. So,
yeah. I think there are some other concerns, and I'm not 100% sure why they walked away from it, but I do know that there are other cases where governors have overstepped their bounds and basically changed law. I mean, the arguments can be made that they have a little bit more levity to do that because they're the executive branch. They have to execute the laws, and they can maybe reinterpret. But like, I think that Texas themselves has been guilty of that in the past. But it doesn't matter. My comment is hold them both accountable and don't let either one of them violate the Constitution, right? And so, like, but that's a clear issue. I believe in the county that Detroit's in as well, there were more people voted than registered voters somehow. But anyway, like all that aside, like again, the Hunter Biden laptop, the suppression of information is enough to have changed the outcome of the election. There's also stuff to suggest that, like, between Google and Facebook, in the way, even aside from the Hunter Biden laptop story, but the way in which they changed their algorithms to favor liberal-leaning news sources to manipulate people to vote Democrat, that's also something that shifted. There was, I think there was a Democrat who did the research into this and suggested that 5 million people changed their vote, would have voted differently had it not been for that manipulation. So there are a lot of concerns there, obviously.
And the drop boxes, the Zuck bucks, okay, the mules, right? Remember that, you know?
Yeah, 2,000 mules. Yeah, absolutely. Which none of what I would say is, like, from a court perspective, like, again, the Pennsylvania thing to me is clear, and the Supreme Court should have stepped in. In a lot of the other issues, like I think of it as if I were a judge or if I was on a jury, I would probably look at it and be like, there's a lot of evidence, but it's more like circumstantial evidence, not circumstantial, but it's not like the glove, so to speak, even though that didn't work in that case. The glove didn't fit, so we had to acquit, but we didn't have like that dagger in the heart piece of evidence that would have proven it beyond the shadow of the doubt. And so I understand why the Supreme Court wouldn't have overturned it as a result of that, but there's a lot of stuff to suggest that this happened. So anyway, that's
the biggest problem I have is the fact that, and they've been bludgeoning us, okay, with the fact that every single lawsuit that Trump brought about the election, he lost. Well, if you know anything about the law, he didn't lose them, okay? Basically, they never had an evidentiary hearing at all, okay? They were all tossed based on standing, right? Yeah. Which is not a loss, okay? It's a bunch of hacks that were put in there that said, nope, just like the Supreme Court, we don't want to hear it. And so they said, he lost all the court, cases. Well, what does the average common American think? I mean, listen to an interview with people on the street, just on YouTube. Just go, oh, we talked to people on the street in New York City. Have you ever seen, They don't even know what the hell presidents are on the dollar bill, and that Benjamin Franklin, how many terms he served as a president. They have no clue. That it was 0, okay? They're like, I don't know, 3. They had no idea. They live their lives in this thing. They've been undereducated by this system. They don't know jack, right? And they weren't raised by two parents who, felt the Constitution was important. When we talk about the Constitution, it's like in many cases you can wipe your behind with it because, the left has been chipping at it for years. And when the McCloskeys wield their weapons and they get them taken away and get indicted, and, when you say what you're going to say and boom, all of a sudden magically you disappear off the town square on Twitter or you get shadow banned, where's your First Amendment, right? Hey, you turn on your computer, talk about illegal search and seizure. Give me a break, man. They tell us, put Scotch tape over your webcams. Are you kidding me, man? If you want to see my schwanker, you've seen it already because there's my bathroom right there. I walk around here naked. I don't care. Man, my FBI handler can peek in here anytime he wants. But I mean, it's just, God, man, we live in this, like literally. And then our government aspires to be like China, man. They're all digging that social, credit score crap. And, over in the UK, they're sawing down the, camera pole on the poles everywhere. Thank God they are. If we lived in a moral society, dude, I'd be like, yeah, I guess the cameras are all right. I mean, if you really want to catch some guy who murdered somebody and, that camera could be important. But not when it's turned around to spy on me, whether I went to a rally, a Trump rally, you know, and that's kind of what they're being used for. So, yeah, we live in a dystopian reality, and I'm hoping we can vote our way out of it. But there's like, I guess I was just to go turn around is there's a million wrenches they're going to get ready to throw in. The Peter Strzok's are going to come out of the woodwork, dude.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and there's so much here, so much I can say to respond to all that. But one of the things is, like, we're not going to be able to just vote our way out. And again, that's where, like, people, I think one of the biggest problems with our country, and I think I understand why. So on the right and the left, like, for the most part, people who are politically engaged have gotten more and more angry and frustrated and upset and, like, agitated about it, whether you're on the right or the left, and that scares the people in the middle, right? And so, unfortunately, because of that, people in the middle try not to take a public position, and as a result, they don't have conversations. And yet, who essentially ends up deciding the election? These people in the middle. And part of, so we actually need that. We need our entire society to be engaged in this process. If this experiment of representative republic, this version of a democratic republic, is actually going to work, we need people to be engaged and involved. But we also need people to be able to, like, actually reason and use logic, right? And that's one of the biggest problems. So you talk about education, like, even if they teach the kids information, they don't teach them how to think. They teach them how to obey. You know, like, I've been talking with a number of people that you could say that rhetoric is something that should be taught in schools, and and logic needs to be taught in schools. I say all that, and, like, they're not doing, the school systems are struggling to teach the things that they're already supposed to teach. So I feel a little bit bad keeping more stuff up on top of them. But these things can actually be taught even without having a class on them. They can be taught by the teachers demonstrating it in various ways throughout the courses. But, like, these things are actually incredibly important. If we're not preparing kids to be able to think things through and kind of a means of coming to truth by looking at the elements and coming up with my brain is skipping. But if we can't like process information and work our way from here to here, and this is how we came to this point of truth. I guess premises to a conclusion. There it is. Putting premises together and finding our way to a conclusion. Then what is the point of what they're doing? Because problem solving and logic and reasoning are like, just, there's nothing I can think very little in the education world that's more important than people being able to do that, to make their own decisions, to ensure that they're not going to be taken advantage of by other people. So I think that's one thing that's grossly missing, is that people don't have the ability to think logically and make decisions and come to conclusions. But again, when we talk about rhetoric, they don't know how to hear what somebody is saying and draw out what they actually mean behind it. One of the things that Donald Trump gets overly criticized about is when he says things like Mexicans. And what he means is criminals coming across the Mexican border, right? So that's one of the things that I know that they've given him a hard time about before. Like, he is not racist against Mexicans. But Donald Trump thinks that everybody is beneath him, doesn't matter what skin they are. And I mean that. He just thinks he's really smart. He's like the greatest. He's the best ever. You know, you hear him talk. He's like, it was the best we've ever, So it's not that he's racist or sexist or anything like that. He just is in love with himself and a bit narcissistic. I do think his narcissism works out for us, because he wants to be remembered as being the best president that we have ever had, which motivates him to do a really good job. And so even if he is narcissistic, that's what his narcissism terminates on. And I got lost in my own thought. But rhetoric, to be able to, like, hear what he's saying and recognize what he actually means by that, rather than trying to twist it like the media does, or just take it at its face value. I took a class in critical thinking at the University of Maine at Farmington, where they taught me to, like, when you're reading somebody, your goal isn't to see what it might say. It's not to see what you think, what it means to you. It's to understand, what did they intend by it? And that is imperative in evaluating somebody's argument. Before you even get to the point of evaluating it, what you think about it, what you think it should be, you first have to talk about, what does this person mean by this?
All right, sorry, stop. You're a very smart guy, and I love to have you on my show. And what you're
Thanks.
talking about is the effect of postmodernism that says that there is no overarching meta narrative, first of all, right? It's just everything's a power play. And what's important is how the hearer, listener, interpret. You can't even possibly understand really what the person that said it is uttering to begin with. And it unmoors you from and because that's exactly where we're at with the Constitution of the United States of America when they started using that term living document, okay, which is a bunch of horse shit, right? Just like I read the Bible. Yeah. What did they intend at the time when they said it to the guy holding the cow that was taking a shit, okay? What did it mean right then? Yeah. Because otherwise you don't understand. And so what did it mean? So you have to look at the Constitution the same way. What was it intended? And I worked in the standards industry for years. I worked for American Gas Association. So I even wrote some of those standards. But when I would write up or look at someone's appliance and say, okay, should I have them stop making this appliance? They've come up with a new piece of technology, and technically it doesn't meet the standard by the letter of the law, but I understand what the law is trying to say, and that's not going to fail. Is this okay? And so, you have to read that in a certain way and say, what is it trying to say? What was it written? How was it written? What were they trying to do? Rather than make it evolve culturally over time. Because again, the Bible, we suffer from that same problem, is we just throw that crap away because, that was old-fashioned, right? I mean, we just throw crap right out, the window. But you talked about the education system, and we have to get the education system back under control. I guarantee you the teachers don't understand what the laws of logic are. They don't understand what the law of non-contradiction is. And if you taught that to most kids or most people, they'd be able to make some sort of critical decisions to say something, well, gee, it can't be this and this. Like, I don't know, how about the whole transsexual thing, the gender thing? It's got to be one or the other, right? But that's just, Yep. But what this comes down to, I think, is in the independents, at least in this current race, right? And the graph that we just saw was reaction over time to Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, where they had the three graphs, right? The blue, the red one, and the yellow one. The yellow one are the independents. And what we saw was the independents are tracking solidly with the Republicans. Every time Donald Trump opened his mouth, whoop, up it went. And every time, vice versa. And I mean, it just obviously, they were both inverse of each other. And that gave me a lot of hope. Now, the question is it baked in the cake at this point? Did the debate change that with those, I don't think those independents were swinging at that moment. I think they've been listening to Donald Trump and going, all right, I'm over it. He's bombastic. He's a bull in a china shop. He comes in. He thinks he's the big swinging dick, which he is in many cases. I mean, he's done a lot of big things. And the other thing is, most of the people that run big corporations and big things and do big things and have to make big decisions are somewhat sociopathic or psychopaths. They are, because they don't care about feelings, right? They just don't. What they do is they're ruthless about, but the thing is that, yes, he's narcissistic, but I've also seen the things that he's done, the ones the media won't tell you about. The lady, the homeless person that's still staying in Trump Tower, that he's never charged a dime from, and she's still living there after, I don't know how many years, 20, 30 years. The stories that we've heard about him paying for surgeries. I mean, the guy burns up the phone, man. I aspire to be someday like that, to give a shit about people, to call him back 2, 3, 4, 5 times, okay? And granted, he's got a secretary out going, I make sure I don't lose track of this, or maybe he's a Superman in his head, but he does these things that nobody talks about. And that's the part that I go, okay, he might be narcissistic, right? And maybe he's even, he's doing good works and he's working his way to heaven. I don't care. He does things differently than all the other, because you can make a big argument that all these sons of bitches on the other side are narcissists, okay? All the Democrats and Uniparty.
You could make an argument that every American is to some degree narcissistic. Like most Americans have some narcissistic tendencies.
Me? No. Moi? No, I agree with you, because we're Americans, right? But we've been taught to hate ourselves, okay? And now we've got this inwardly turned narcissism, okay, that we're like become self-loathing, right? And I think that's a bad cancer right now, and that came because of this Marxist color revolution and all the crap that we've been going through. So, but yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think, just to bring this plane in and land it, that locally is our best hope of really doing anything. And I think the international focus, the way I look at it, is see what's going on in other places to see what works, is how we can fight the fight in the best way we can, make use of it here locally, and be local. And then if we win local fights, then we take that stuff and we try and export it to other people in other states, right? That's the way I kind of looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, number one, the most important decisions of if our Constitution works out the way that it was written and the way that we want it to, it means that, and Russell Brand talks a lot about this, is like local communities should be making the most significant decisions about what goes on in my life. And that's where, like, whether you like him or hate him, pushing abortion back to the states is actually giving the people at a local level more control. It's not allowing, for instance, the majority to, like, if one state wants to do things a particular way, the other states can't force them not to do it. And I think that regardless of whether or not that's the position that I think we should take on the issue of abortion, I do think that generally speaking, that is how our state, our country should be governed. I think I should be able to have, if the things are made more locally, I have more power and influence over my life than if they're made by a bunch of people in Washington. Or to quote the Patriot, like, why should I trade one tyrant 3,000 miles away for 3,000 tyrants 1 mile away? An elected legislature can trample a man's rights as easily as a king. And that's what's happening now, right? We've got these elected legislatures, and especially the ones in Washington. The ones more locally are much less likely, despite the quote, are much less likely to trample our rights and not take care of us, because they have to answer to us. They live in the same town as us. They live in the same area, and they're going to be held accountable. But the people who end up, essentially living in Washington while they quote unquote represent us don't. But we have a lot of impact that we can do at the local level, in this election. So if you're not involved, contrary to Anarchy Television, who's clearly an arbiter of all truth, but contrary to them, there are things that we can do to help influence things in a positive direction. And I don't believe it's all lost. I don't believe that we should give up. I think that's a fatalistic ideology. And for me, I'm a Christian. I believe in God. I don't necessarily know what his plan is for the nation of the United States of America, but I do believe that there is hope that we can turn things around here. And they're not, the fact of the matter is, as bad as we see things going, and think things are, people from outside the country who come here still think this is the best place to live in the world, as much as it has fallen. And so the reality is there's still a lot of good going on in this country. And if we just sit there and focus on the bad, we can think that there's no hope. But I think there is hope, and the hope is around getting involved. So if you're not involved and you're just sitting complaining and whining, get involved. Talk to your local people, figure out what you can do. It doesn't mean you have to go door to door. It doesn't mean you have to give them thousands of dollars. But there is something that you can bring to the table that you can help move our country in a better direction at a local level and have an impact in our world.
Yeah, I agree. And on that note, I would say that you want to hit that notify bell on YouTube and like, subscribe, share. And if you want to do something seriously, and if you want to help out, we know you're busy. I'm not. I don't do anything except just sit here and do this kind of stuff and try and bring all this stuff to people and give you a platform and stuff like this. No, of course, we're crazy busy, but unfortunately, it's not making a ton of cash. So if you can help out in that regard, awesome. If you can't, keep forwarding the message, do all that kind of stuff. We watched live streaming for a long time. We weren't able to, being able to donate. But yeah, do what you can and do what you can locally. And, the other thing I would say is that, the whole anarchy thing is I've listened to, what's the guy who's the anarchist? I can't remember. Michael Malice. He's an interesting guy. It's not as crazy as the sound of it is, but bottom line is, if you go through that stop sign, you're just not going to be able to walk into court like you see on some of these YouTube videos, like, and go to the judge and go, I'm sorry, I do not subscribe to the laws of this nation. I did not elect you. I did not blah, blah, blah. I did not vote for you. I am an independent citizen. I'm leaving now. You don't have no jurisdiction over me. See how that goes? It's not going to go over real well. You're going to be in an orange jumpsuit and orange, what do they call them things? Moccasins or whatever the hell they call them. Crocs. That's it. I've worn those only once, by the way, and I didn't like it very much at all. It wasn't very fun. Actually, I did it twice, and it was both about the same thing. The first night I was drunk, and then the next night I had to serve the rest of the 48 hours. It was bad. I don't want to do that. So, but yeah, man, I mean, you're still going to, you have to work within the system you work in if you're going to live in this country. Otherwise, because you're going to come underneath some governance somewhere, even if that's at the local level, right? I mean, you're going to go hyper local and they nuke everything and the power stations go down, they shot them all, or we have the blast over the atmosphere, the EMP that takes crap out. You don't think there's going to be voting going on on the local level? Right, with paper and pencil and straws and shit, you're not going to escape this process, right? And so, yeah, you're going to have to be involved in it to try and steer the ship the best you can, and this is the best that we have until said time as it is. And like I said, I think at that point we're going to kind of know, and I don't know that that's necessarily anarchy, that's chaos, right? And that's not going to be a good thing for a while. And but yeah, I think that, hey, Mayo Monkey, I think that you have to have a hierarchy, you have to have a structure. If you watch Jordan Peterson for any amount of time, our system would fall up. We have to have systems that hold things together, right? And there's chaos and there's order, and we have to have that order. And this is the best way we've come up with so far, probably on the planet. And it's very flawed at times. And I think we got some serious things to work out with election integrity, because if we don't trust our elections, our institutions have been, we've lost faith in our institutions, most of them, right? In some ways, the Supreme Court's redeemed itself, but not in all ways. I'm not quite sure there isn't corruption going on, especially when there was Epstein involved with that, Judge Roberts, but that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But yeah, we got to work with what we can, and what you can affect the most is what's going on right in your town, right even in your damned homeowners association, for God's sakes. You can be a participant, and try and, just go there and steer this ship in the right direction, and offer a word of encouragement, fight back. And seriously, the biggest thing is don't be silent anymore, right? Yeah. That's where we've got it. But when we talk, we have to be careful, right? We have to be careful how we say things and what we say. And I think in this day of hyper, sensitivity, we need the nonviolent options are the ones we need to go to every single time, okay? And the first one is voting. So we all need to be doing that, right? I think that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, the other most significant one, there's a ton of other ways to get involved. Feel free to reach out if you want to find out how. But the other one is just having conversations with people that you disagree with in a way that you're not treating them like crap. Like I feel very fortunate. I live in Portland, Maine, very liberal, really good friends who are liberals, very, very much on the other side of the aisle. And I'm able to have incredible conversations with them and talk through politics and religion with people in a society that says you shouldn't talk politics and religion, and you better not do it with people who disagree with you. Everybody else, we're all living in silos. But the ability to have these conversations with people who disagree with you and still walk away. In fact, my friend texted me and he was a little worried that he had been a little too extreme on one of the issues. I was like, nah, man, you were fine. I really appreciate that we can still have these conversations. I came away feeling good. And he's like, thanks, so did I. The fact that we can have those, and that's what we need to have, because there's opportunity for us to, through presenting things that we're not thinking about because we're off in our silo, to learn something from one another and realize that we might be wrong about something. And hopefully they'll realize that they might be wrong about something if we're presenting truth, and so I think that's the other piece that's so important outside of voting.
Well, and I you say that, and it's amazing that you happen to say that, because I'm friends with a guy named David Patrick, and we've talked for quite some time on the phone. And last week, I made the unfortunate decision to have a few beers and have a Spaces. And he popped in, and I was siloed, as you say. I mean, it was a very accurate, lucid way to say it. And I'd been influenced by somebody talking in another ear of mine, telling me who he was, using labels, And see, my whole thing has been about dropping the labels. I've mentioned it before. I think I did today, and this is a running theme with me. And so, yes, okay, sometimes we use them. We need to use them. We have some categories. Otherwise, we'll never be able to communicate. But if we overuse them and we're burdened by them and we don't, look past them, then we're in trouble. And, he came into the spaces and I came in hot. And I traded him terrible. I traded him poorly. And I think in some cases I misjudged him. Now, I'm not sure, and I'm not necessarily saying that I completely, trust him completely from the standpoint of we agree on everything ideologically to agree on how to solve a situation. But I tell you, man, he was one of the most compassionate, most gracious guys that I would ever. It was not one of my high points. Okay, I'll just tell you that. I was very embarrassed by it, and I think I even sent you an apology and saying, because I was going to get you hooked up in that spaces. And so I did very poorly in that regard, and it was not what my main goal was. And so we're going to give this thing another shot with David and I, and we're going to talk some more and stuff like that, because I do think it's very, very important, because if we can't do that and can't get out of these things where we're at each other's throats and we just can't have a conversation about stuff, we will literally never get anything solved.
Yeah, the divide will just get worse and worse and worse until we're, doing violent things, which has happened in history, right?
Yeah, right. And I think we're on the brink of it, and we don't want to do that. So we need to keep doing this, like this right now. So anyway, I'm very excited about having you here again. Are we talking again tomorrow?
Tomorrow?
Yeah. Did you make 2 appointments accidentally?
Well, I accidentally did, but I was intending to select today, so not tomorrow, but probably next week. We'll get one on the books next week.
Yeah, good, because I really enjoy having you here. You're a very smart guy, and you're challenging, and I like to talk to you a lot. And the people, I've had great response in the chat. Got a number of people watching on YouTube today, which is good. Trying to start growing all these different channels. So.
You're a great host too. I mean, you make it easy for me to fit in and find ways to, share my perspective and my thoughts, but still lead and guide the conversation. So I always have a great time with alone. So yeah,
good.
Thank you.
Well, I'm achieving my goals, because that's exactly what I aim to do, is to make people feel comfortable so that they can relax, open up, and share what gems they really are. Because I find that people in situations where they're uncomfortable, and like I said, this siloed thing too, you don't know who people are. And so this is the kind of format where you get to, understand what people are thinking and their motivation. And I like long form interviews like this, because if anybody has the patience, hopefully they're starting to. I think there's a hunger for it growing again. And so I'm glad that you're helping have these conversations with me. I hope that people are having patience and being stretched and learning things here. And that I hope you'll come back and join me sometime, maybe even having this chat with David Patrick, because I think that you have that spirit. That maybe you might be a good person to almost have as a moderator. And I wouldn't even call it that, because I don't want to have a debate with the guy, right? But I think it would just be good to have a 3-way conversation, to just bounce some things off of each other, because I think you're very open-minded. So
I try. That's the best way to find truth, is to be open-minded.
Yeah, man. Yep. But not too open-minded so that they just come along and throw trash in your brain, right?
Right. Well, not as they say, open-minded for the sake of being open-minded. If you're open-minded just to be open-minded, you won't ever find truth, because you won't accept truth, because, if I believe that, then I won't be open-minded. But it's actually open-minded for the sake of finding truth. Now, once I explore something and come to a conclusion, unless there's new evidence that's presented, I'm going to maintain that position. But I am open-minded. If we present new information, I'll look into it, and I may not agree with it, but that doesn't make me not open-minded, right?
You're persuadable, but on the things that you've got settled, you're settled until you have new information. I couldn't have said it any better.
Yep.
All right, so Chuck, thanks again, man. You have a good day. I really appreciated having you here with me live, man.
Thanks.
Yeah, keep working that race, man. Good luck.
Will do. Thanks.
Bye. All right, guys, that was fun. That was a good time. I really enjoyed having Chuck on. Always do. He's super stimulating, man. And I don't know why it just you watch network television, and you get these people on there and they sound smart and all this kind of stuff, and you go, wow, they're really smart. And then when you start talking to people, you go, wow, he's really smart. I mean, it's crazy. There's all sorts of people that are around at the local level that are reaching out, trying to do stuff, trying to make a difference in the world, trying to change. So it's really awesome. And this is what we try and do here at the TruthSlinger Project, while also simultaneously trying to live a life where I don't blow my brains out and take care of myself and all that kind of stuff, trying to figure out where we fit in here. We want to be going places out in the field and stuff like that, and at some point I know we will, and it'll be exciting when we do that. We do know that we're going to be at the drive-in in Saco in the evening, and actually before the evening, for the big movie Triad Weed, right, by Main Wire. So September 20th, yeah. So you want to be there or be square, boys and girls. We will be there with business cards in hand, passing them out to everyone, promoting the TNN, TruthSlinger News Network. If you would like to have a podcast of your very own, and I need to talk to Chuck about that, whether he's interested in doing one of his own, and then I can sit in the background, and he seems like he's be perfectly capable of carrying on for an entire hour talking about stuff while I sit in the background sucking a cup of coffee, producing his show. So I'll be talking about that. But if you'd like to do something like that, if you're interested in doing a podcast that you've never done, you go, eek, I'm scared, I don't know what I'm doing. You don't really need to. You just need to learn how to share a screen, turn your mic on, turn your camera on. We can get your echo taken care of, stuff like that. And we'll get you on, and we'll get you talking to people and producing a podcast of your very own. And you know what? The price is right. You know how much it costs you? Zero. It costs you nothing. No, it doesn't cost you nothing. Now, sooner or later, you might start feeling guilty and saying, Tim, you do all this for me. What can I do for you? And then I might say, a few bucks, maybe a donation or something every once in a while. That would be awesome. But that's not required. We're counting on the fact that people want access to a platform so they can talk to people, and that people will respond well to that, because we're trying to lift up, first and foremost, Christ here, right? It's not on every program we have. We don't talk about it all the time, but he is our Lord and Savior. At least he's mine, okay? And so bottom line, as long as you're not Antichrist, as long as you don't want to have a black mass on my show, I'm not going to produce a black mass for you. That would probably be not cool. But other than that, if you want to do something about health, fitness, diet, eating, whatever you want to do. Talk about politics, man, it doesn't matter. News, music, be a VJ, let your mind wander. What is it that you might want to do? Do something. You're a leather worker, you got a camera, all you got to do is flip your camera so that it's down on top of what you're working on, and you just talk about shit while you're making leather goods, right? Lots of ways to make content. So we're looking for, creators, content creators, so that it's good for the network, right? What's good for the network? Ask yourself, what's good for the network? Having more people come on and making more content. That's what's good for the network. So we thank you. We really appreciate you. We enjoyed having you for episode 308 live of TruthSlinger. I have to go continue to use my voice, my fine, smooth, ruddy voice, in a book about bikers. Yeah. My name is Chaos. And let me tell you something. Man, I can hump like a son of a bitch. Man, I'm telling you, I just had this sex scene in chapter 5. Her round globes. Oh, my God. My steel shaft. Oh, my God. Hey, don't criticize it. I'm getting paid to read this stuff, okay? I guide my member. All right. Am I sharing too much about this book? The whole thing's not a porno book. It's about like a gang and, and a murder. It's a rough and tumble kind of book, and framings going on. And she was a lawyer, and he's a hot biker. And, well, he's hot for her. She's hot for him. And, they use bad words. And it was hard to say the bad words because I'm Christian. And I had to say words like, well, you can imagine what words I had to say. I don't have to say them. I have to say them over. It's embarrassing. And I only say that kind of stuff to my wife. I tell my wife, say that word. Say that word. When we're having sex, I go, say that word. All right, man. My name's Tim. I'm your TruthSlinger. That's my show for the day. Yeah, man. Warhammer 40,000. All right, man. We enjoyed seeing you here today. Thank you so much. I'm going to go talk to Chuck for a minute. He's hanging around in the green room. I love you. My name is TruthSlinger. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.